appreciate all of you being here today for our third installment of our Fall 2017 Faculty Empowering Teaching Excellence Seminar Series. This one's on community engaged learning. So we'll talk in a moment here about our panelists. Just give you a few quick ETE updates. Our good news, our Fall 2017 Empowering Teaching Excellence, Journal on Empowering Teaching Excellence is out as of about a week ago, with some great contributions, most of them from our regional campuses. We have, if you're interested in it, we have our bookmarks over there that have information about how to access it. And we're currently accepting submissions for the spring edition. It's a peer-reviewed journal focused on teaching. It's cross-disciplinary in terms of what type of discipline you might be teaching in. And it's open to more than just USU. In fact, we have over 1,000 downloads from our first issue, which released about 6 months ago. And that's just by virtue of it being available on Digital Commons. It just gets a lot of traffic that way. So it gets out there. So we're excited about that. Also wanted to give you a heads up about another event, an affiliated ETE event coming up on Friday, December 1st from 1 to 4:30. And this is called Revamp Your Assignment, an interdisciplinary faculty workshop. So I'll read the description here real quick. As a partner in student learning, the library is holding an afternoon workshop in which a group of instructors engage in collaborative assignment design. If you've heard the word charrette before, that's kind of the fancy word for that. This dynamic event will provide an opportunity for intensive peer feedback from an interdisciplinary group of colleagues, including librarians and instructional designers. Assignments do not need to be research focused and can be for graduate or undergraduate courses in any department. This is an ETE affiliated event which qualifies participants for an ETE 10 digital badge. Which, by the way, any of our ETE events do. So those of you who are here after this is done, you're welcome. You can go to empowerteaching.usu.edu/ETE10 and click on the ETE 10 badges link and submit to get an Engage badge. If you get a great idea and you say, I want to try that out, try it out, come back later, submit an Implement badge, and you can get 2 badges out of this, and that'll work towards either a teaching scholar or a master teacher certificate, which you can include in your packet or wherever you want. Okay, and then lastly, another plug to check out the online resources at thrive.usu.edu. We have a bookmark over there on that. This is an initiative of the Student Retention Office, and it has resources for faculty there. So now on to the main event. We're talking about community engaged learning, formerly known as service learning. And we're very happy to have Kristen Brubaker here, who's a community engagement specialist at the Community Engaged Learning Office. She is joined by our panelists. We have Randy Martin, who's an associate professor of civil and environmental engineering and a research associate professor at the Utah Water Research Laboratory. And then we have Debra Jenson, who is an assistant professor in the School of Applied Sciences, Technology, and Nope,
that's not me.
I'm reading the wrong person.
Yikes.
Assistant Professor of Journalism and Communication. There we go. I started reading that and I was like, that doesn't look right.
That did not feel right either.
All right, and then we have, sorry about that, just keeping you on your toes. Okay. And then we have Jennifer Reeve over here, who is an Associate Professor of Organic and Sustainable Agriculture with Plant, Soils, and Climate. Did I get that right?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. And then absent, but also we'll be at least talking somewhat about her work, but she couldn't end up making it today, is Windi Turner, who's an assistant professor at the School of Applied Sciences, Technology, and Education. That was the one I was accidentally reading. Community engaged learning is a teaching and learning strategy that integrates partnerships with community agencies, meaningful community service and reflection to enrich the learning experience, teach civic responsibility, and strengthen communities. And so today's panelists are going to be sharing examples of how they worked with campus resources like Kristen's office to implement this strategy in their classes. So I'll turn it over to our panelists. Thank you very much.
And I'm gonna actually, do we need to use this?
Let's try.
in Brigham
Those
City,
of you
yeah.
who are at the regional campuses and eastern sites, please let us know if you have any trouble hearing us. I'm going to set this mic down. If you do, we'll pass the mic around. Otherwise, we'll just see if the room mics work. Okay?
They all seem on board. Okay. So I'm going to start and just take a few minutes to talk about community engaged learning broadly to make sure that everyone sort of has an understanding of what it is and what the program at USU looks like before we turn it over to the panel. So as I go through this, save all of your questions and we'll get to the panel in just a few minutes. So to start with, as we just heard, CEL is a teaching and learning approach that integrates community service, meaningful community service, and reflection with academic study. And the real point of community engaged learning is to give students hands-on experience of course concepts. So it's very key that CEL classes tie directly to the course objectives and work with one of our community partners. Community partners can be a broad group of people, anyone from groups on our campus to nonprofits in the community to local governments. We have a really close relationship with the city of Logan, for example. We even have some situations where we're working with businesses as long as it's working towards a public good. This is meaningful because it gives students a deeper engagement, deeper learning, while at the same time helping our community agencies meet their goals and address community need. And also it's been shown to definitely create a deeper experience and a more lasting learning experience for students. So just looking really quickly at how this is different, because I think this is one of the biggest questions I get. I have a lot of faculty who say, well, I have them do 5 hours of community service on their own. They can pick where they go. That's what they do. And that's not really community engaged learning, just because it's not partnering with one of our partners, and more importantly, it's not tying directly to our course materials. And that, again, is that key piece here. Any experiential learning is great. It's going to get students out of the classroom, give them a different way to learn, but in this case, they're really sort of tying that hands-on experience to the course concepts and course materials. To me, this is the best way that you can really equip students for their careers, their long-term careers, because you're giving them that direct hands-on experience that they're going to use long-term. And then these are just a few areas as to why you would include service learning or community engaged learning in your courses. And I'll let you read this. And while you do so, what I want to emphasize more than anything, obviously there's going to be some great benefits for the students, for the community partners. When it comes to our faculty, we strongly, strongly encourage our faculty to consider not just adding this as a service component in your TMP file. That's great. You probably have more than enough of that. And really, where community engaged learning comes in is at that teaching level and at that community-based research level. We're seeing more and more community-based research in our classes, and I think this is a great way for you to sort of get the assistance that you need to get the data so that you can publish. For example, I have a faculty member who, I want to say last year, is a communication studies faculty, and she was working on a project that was working with youth and their parents and how they interact with education and educational experiences. She had her students go and work with one of our agencies that provides STEM education after school programs, and the students actually collected all of her data. They were able to use that data themselves to publish to work on their own class projects, but then she was able to take that data, recode it, and use it for her larger project, which she was publishing on. So a great way to give those students hands-on experience, but then also to benefit from it yourself. Yeah.
So in that example, how would IRB work?
So in that example, because that data was part of a bigger set, she actually had the IRB approval from the larger one, and these were added as additional people. So, and I don't know if you want to speak specifically to how you're doing that this year.
A whole class of students. That could be really tricky.
Yeah, I submit an IRB for the larger project and list each student as an additional researcher and go through the bigger one so that if I want students to be able to publish, or if I want to publish something larger from it later, I can. And sometimes you get a fun surprise back from IRB, and sometimes it's, harder than you think it's going to be.
And I will say, if you are not planning on publishing on it, IRB is typically pretty loose. So if you're just doing it for the sake of your class, or even if you're doing it for the sake of a community partner, but never really adding to the general knowledge, there's a very simple classroom form. It's an ROI that you just fill out, and they basically have a template. And that's pretty speedy going through. The one thing I will say when it comes to doing your own research is obviously get your IRB protocol started as soon as possible, which is a good lesson for everyone regardless. So just saying, faculty-wise, definitely consider it outside of that service thing. The other thing I will say really quickly about faculty benefits is we are currently in discussions and working towards getting higher recognition for community engaged learning in TNP. And we are currently, come spring, we will be applying for the Carnegie Community Engagement Classification, which is an ongoing classification that honors institutes of higher ed who are leaders in civic and community engagement. And that's something that the Provost's office is very much so on board with. So the more that we can sort of fit this in with that, the more traction I think we're going to see. So just know that it is happening. Nothing too much right now, but hopefully soon. And then I'm actually going to skip this, and maybe we can talk about it a little bit more with the panels, but I just want to say in general, here are a few of our example projects. Really, we have CEL courses that are offered in every single college at USU, and we have some that are distance ed as well. It's fairly simple to add this component to a class. The main thing is, again, you're working with a community agency, you are having it tied directly to your learning objectives, and then the other piece is it does need to be a graded component of your class. So it does sort of have to hold some weight in one way or another. So we'll talk about that later. But then the last thing that I wanted to talk about really quickly is the CBI Partnership Program, which the Community Bridge Initiative is USU's partnership program for really connecting campus resources with community agencies. And this works with our CEL courses, but it's also how community agencies might find one-time volunteers, or how they might find internships, or just post opportunities or events going on. The partnership program sort of is an umbrella blanket, but they can choose if they want to partner with classes. And those who do want to partner with classes, we add just a little bit of structure here to make it easier for faculty to find these projects for their classes. So to start with, we do require an MOU for all of our classes, or excuse me, for all of our community partners. The big piece here is it basically covers you liability-wise, and it also puts the responsibility of any background check on that community agency. So you're clear from all of that. The other thing that we require is we actually have our community partners propose projects to us. So we have them fill out a simple form that is basically, what are your greatest needs? What are the projects that could fit these needs? And which ones would you prioritize for us to work with? Who do you think would be a good partner for this? And we take that information and then work to match it with classes. It's wonderful because you don't have to go out and find those projects yourself. You just basically come to me and say, I'm teaching SOC 4370, I made up that number, class. What do you have for me? This is what I would like my students to learn from this. And I have a list of all of these projects and can say, here's what we'd love you to do, or here are 3 things. I also can work very closely with the community partners, because we do find sometimes they're asking for a project that really is not going to fit within a class, maybe the class length or what the students are learning, or maybe they're asking for something really technical. And so that's an opportunity for us to work together to really sort of develop that project or customize that project so it's perfect for your class. But what we want you to know is you don't have to create these projects yourself. You can come to us and we'll help you with that process. If you want to create these these projects yourself, that's also absolutely fine. We do ask you to sort of follow the requirements that we have, but if you want to make these relationships in the community, definitely, that's awesome. If you do decide to do that, let me know so that I can once again ensure that they do have an MOU with us, or we can have them sign an MOU just to protect everyone. So then if you do decide that you would like to add one of these engagement opportunities to your course, what we do is we have a simple designation form, and this really is a 2-page form. It is meant to ensure that you sort of have everything in place so that this class can be designated on transcripts. Students can see it when they log into Banner, so they can select classes that are specifically CEL courses, and it is something that they can graduate with. We actually have a specific honors program of community engaged scholars who are completing a set amount of courses and doing some additional work. For designating a course, the requirements, again, you're working with a community partner. That community partner has an MOU. The second piece is that you complete a scope of work, which again, very simple, one-page form. More than anything, it's an opportunity for you to sit down with your community partner and work through the details of the project. Who is going to be responsible for what? What are the deliverables? What does the timeline look like? All of those pieces, so once the class starts, you have a clear understanding of what to tell your students, and you will also understand what your responsibilities are for it. The students complete the project, which is just your project as defined. They complete a reflection activity, which allows them to sort of internalize their learnings, tie it to the bigger pictures. At USU, we're working on creating citizen scholars, so this is key of taking that single experience and tying it to that bigger picture. And then also completing or using Aggie Sync, which is our database, to really track any community engagement on all of USU's campuses, using that to log hours, to fill out reflections, and then to complete assessments at the end of the year. So fairly simple requirements. The big pieces are really just making sure you have a community partner and a scope of work more than anything. And then designation forms, I actually do have a few with me today for anyone who's interested in them, and then they can be found on our website, which is just cel.usu.edu. Fairly simple. So I will pause there before we sort of shift over to the panel. That was fairly quick. Any questions before I do so?
That was awesome.
Okay. So, do you all need the microphone? Should I put that over there? I'll just come down. Okay.
Oh my gosh, is that what that is?
Surprise.
The clink of your water bottle?
Yeah. Sorry, everybody.
So I'd actually love to start by just having you each sort of, if you want to introduce yourself anymore and talk about specifically the classes that you teach, but how you became interested in community engaged learning and what community projects offer that students wouldn't have experience otherwise. So Randy, we'll start with you.
All right. Well, as mentioned, I'm on the faculty of civil environmental engineering, and I'm kind of the air pollution guy around here. So I've been doing a lot of air quality research local to the valley as well as the state. I came here in the year 2000, which was the year that we discovered we had an air pollution problem. So it's been blamed on me because I happened to be here when we found that out. But it is a natural leading into community experiences with the class. There's some drawbacks in at least my approach in the engineering world, because we have to teach them stuff before they can go out and do the things. And so they're kind of late in the semester when they get started on a lot of the projects. And that's the biggest problem that I found. As far as being involved with the community agencies, I've had nothing but positive experiences. Well, I won't quite say that, I guess. There's always a few naysayers out there. But mostly people want to work with us, work with our students, have more importantly given us access to areas we need to have access to. Not only the city, but also the county, also several businesses we've worked with have been really great. But it goes beyond just community bridge projects as well. There's not a semester I've been here where the students haven't been involved with some local air quality related issue. Right now in my class, students are building and designing signage and sampling, little low-cost sampling systems that will tell you how much pollution is near the roadway when you park and idle your cars. The formal project that I did most recently with CBI was dealing with actually assessing the difference between idling and hot start emissions here in the Cache Valley, and trying to assess that valley-wide and see how much of an impact that really was. And that was also part of a project related to that, not related to that, but at the same time we had students try to estimate what the impact of fireworks are here in the Cache Valley. That was an official CBI project, but had very local ramifications as well. Like I said, my biggest takeaway is getting students involved early in something that's not going to overwhelm them by the time they get to the end of the semester. And that was my take-home point on that. We've done all sorts of things. Like I say, everything we've done practically is related to Cache Valley in one way or another with the students.
Yeah, and I had the opportunity to attend the final presentations of your class once, and blown away with the work that the students were developing and how creative they were, which I think is a big thing that a lot of our community partners benefit from, is they're stuck sort of defining the project as they define the project, and then all of a sudden you have these young students approaching it from completely different avenues, and a lot of times it can lead to some really creative solutions that they wouldn't have come up with otherwise.
I will say that most of the things the students have done haven't been a solution to the air quality problem here in the valley, but really more of an awareness, maybe fill in a small little part of data that's been missing. I just gave a test that was due today, a take-home test, and one of the problems was how can we clean up the air in the Cache Valley from an engineering standpoint. And so they had to design a system that would theoretically do that. And it turned out the system they designed ended up costing $13 trillion. So if you want to know how much it costs to clean the air, that's what it would cost. If you're going to pull the pollution out of the air, basically. So we need to clean it the other way by not making it. So those are the kind of things I have the students think about and do.
Awesome.
Sorry. Okay, I'm nowhere near that exciting. So I came to Utah State from the nonprofit world, and so I was I was very reluctant to leave that world. So when I came here, the very first thing I did when I was designing my courses was, how can I keep my foot in that world as well? So let's see, for 4 or 5 years, my students, I partnered with Special Olympics Utah in some way, and they were doing research on participants and on coaches and on family experiences. And just last year, one of the things that I've noticed is you're very much at the whim of whatever's happening in the organization that you're working for. And my preferred community partner, Special Olympics Utah, was going through a lot of internal change, so they became harder to work with. And it wasn't really their fault. It just was my students weren't getting as great an experience, and so I reached out, and now I'm working with 2 schools in the area. I really love the idea that my students get to go out in the community. They go to these schools, they walk through them, they get a tour, and then they've been conducting focus groups with high school students, which, if nothing else, is just fun to watch their faces when they come back after they've spent a day with 20 high school students. And they're like, oh my gosh, was I like that? Yeah, you probably were. So that's for a research methods course that we do. And so in 2-3 weeks, our community partners will be here getting final presentations from this semester's students, where they're going to make recommendations on how to recruit more female students to a STEM-focused school, and how effective are the perceptions of a school program by students and faculty, whether or not they think it's effective. In the other class that I teach a social media course on campus, and we have students that we work with 9 client partners on and off the campus, and we go anywhere from like 9 students a semester to 20. And so right now this semester, I'm glad I'm not the one teaching it. We switched semesters. She has 9 students, so they have one student per client. And that's one thing that gets really challenging is if you have one college student who's responsible for communicating with and follow through with a client, there's not a backup there if that student, experiences some sort of event and can't get their work done. But what we have had fun with there is, again, like what you were saying with your work, letting students be really creative. If you follow JCOM on social media, that's students doing that work, and they do some stuff that I'm like, I would never think to do that. And they're getting a chance to learn the theory in class and then apply it almost immediately. And then they get to, almost right after that, they get to watch and get data in real time, especially in a social media class, right? They get to come in with analytics, and they'll show you a graph, and they'll be like, look at all these likes that we got, or look at our engagement and our reach percentage. It's so, and they get really excited, and you can't get that in a hypothetical scenario. They just don't get that real world immediate high, or, ugh, this didn't go anywhere, let's talk about why. So that's the other thing is, it's not always here's this really successful campaign we had. Sometimes it's oh crap, we crashed and burned, why? And that's the biggest thing that we had to do with our clients is sit them down and say, you're working with students. In the terminology we use to be super technical, they're gonna F up sometimes, and you need to be okay with that. That's probably what I've got for you.
And social media is really interesting because that's a constant ask that we have from our partners. Anything from social media just to PR and marketing, which is another big one that we have classes every semester who are creating marketing packages that are going out into the community, which is huge, and that needs to be updated on a regular basis. So it's sort of that self-perpetuating project.
Yeah, baby animal days, that's us. So if you go play with the baby animals, that's because we told you about it.
And Jennifer, your projects are a little bit different because you've been working with the same sort of thing for a while.
So yes, my project is quite a bit different. I've been here since 2007, and it was actually Robert Schmidt who got me involved with the community engaged learning on campus. He was one of my teaching mentors during the early tenure process, and he said, your class is pretty much service learning as well, or experiential learning anyway. You could probably just tweak a few things, and this could be a really good addition for your coursework. So that's what I did. So what do? Well, I teach the classes, and I'm the community partner, so I'm both. How does that work?
That's cheating.
That's what I asked. But apparently it isn't. And I do have community partners as well. So this is how it works. So I am the mentor for the Student Organic Farm. The Student Organic Farm is a club on campus. It's a College of Ag club. It's also a university club. And so it has a farm manager, an outreach manager, so a production manager, an outreach manager, and a number of interns every year. And they really, together with my guidance, run a small business. So it's 100% self-funded, and we do everything, or they do everything. I help them with the planning, right? And then they do this. So they market their produce, they advertise it, and they keep track of all the money and communicate with the customers and plan the planting plan and execute that planting plan, and then they harvest and put on fundraisers. So they do everything that a small business market garden would be doing without the financial risk. And so what I have done is linked my regular classes, because I also teach organic farming, in with the student farm, as well as with local organic farms in Cache Valley, but it's, for various reasons, it's worked best as a relationship with the student farm. And so I do link it with my course objectives. And I have 2 classes, and in one of them there's just a 6-hour requirement. And I have a number of specific activities that they can get involved in. So depending on their interests and the number of students. Because I would say my biggest challenge is my class. It's also highly variable. It can range from maybe 10 students to nearly 40, depending on the year. And I'm not quite sure why it varies so much, but it does. And the other class tends to be just 10 to 15. And this year it's just 4. So also varies. But the big class, the main challenge is finding something to do for so many students. And I should also mention that the student farm has been, we've hosted other classes on our farm a number of times. And that's also been the challenge, how do we find meaningful projects for so many students? And until a few years ago, I had a really great technician who was really enjoyed and had the skills to work with students and came up with creative projects to get them involved with. And it worked really well, but then I lost him, and my new technician didn't have that same skill set, so we had to scale that back in terms of inviting other classes to participate. But we create a number of projects for them to participate in, whether it's helping seed in the greenhouse or transplant, or out into the hoop houses, or help with our campus stand. Or work on articles for our Facebook page or a newsletter, or I even say, if you have meet with our student farm managers. If you guys come up with a really cool idea that you want to work on together, just let me know, and we'll formalize that, and that will work. So it works really well in that kind of a framework. Now, I do have a number of informal community partners, and I am working on formalizing it. But it's actually quite challenging to get growers to sit down with you and and agree to be. And they're also concerned with large numbers of students trampling through their farm, getting in the way and messing things up. So they tend to be really cautious on what they're even willing to engage in. Which is why the student farm route, initially I thought, I could have some students work at different places, but the logistics have just favored that student farm class model better. But I do have a number who are open, willing at least to having small, a couple of students at a time, and often they might even just shadow what's going on. And I think that's still meaningful, because I have all the students write a 2-page essay, reflective essay at the end, which is graded, and I leave it very open-ended. I say, well, what did you do? What did you learn? And what were your thoughts on how this connected to your larger understanding of organic agriculture, something like that. And I'm really heartened by the level of reflection I get back. It's actually really fun reading these essays, and I had I had a stack of them after 5 years, this thick, and I said, what could I do with this? So I actually approached Dr. Kelsey Hall, who was in your department at that time, and she actually, with another student, coded the essays for evidence of experiential learning, and then we published that
Nice.
in a journal, which was really nice, because there's so many student farms in the US, but actually very little documentation of what students are actually learning as a result of that. So we were able to show that they're actually primarily learning a lot of soft skills. That was often what they, yes, we were helping to seed, but I worked with another student. I researched this problem. Even just in the short time period, I got a real sense of what hard work meant, and what it took to really plan something and see it through. And so I think that they really get something out of it. So.
And I would agree with that. We have wealth of information. I mentioned earlier one of the requirements of CEL is there's an assessment at the end, and it's a very simple Qualtrics survey that goes out to your students. That's in addition to the ideal survey that they take anyways, and then there's one that goes to faculty and one to our community partners, just to better understand how we can provide these opportunities in the future and how we can improve on them. And some of the text that we get back from the students is just absolutely amazing to read. They're saying things like, this is life-changing, this has changed my perspective of my career, I have these soft skills that, I thought I was going to learn this and instead I learned this. We've had quite a few that say, I thought I was going to work with kids. Now I know I don't want to. but a lot of them really speak positively about how much this experience not only gained to their classroom experience, but also to their perspectives as a whole, which is really great. And I don't know, Randy and Deb, if you had anything else just from what you've heard from your students or even seen from your students as to surprising.
One of my favorite semesters, the evaluation. So for my research methods class and for social media, there's almost always a couple of people on the evaluations who say, oh, I loved working with a client because even when it was tough, now I have a better idea. And some people who say, I hated working with a client. I wish you would have let me just pick my client or pick my research project. But one semester in my research methods course, they write an academic paper, like 23 pages, and they all think it's the end of their lives when they first approach it. They write an academic paper for me, and then the client gets copies of that, but they also get an executive summary with recommendations on the top, so they don't have to read the academic paper. One semester, the last comment on things you liked about this course on the idea evaluations was, this was so great, now I know I want to go to graduate school. And then the first comment on things I hated about this course was, this was awful, I will never go to graduate school. And I was like, yes. This is, fine. That's great. At least you got a better idea of what you're really going to do out there, and I'm cool with that, right? Graduate school isn't for everybody. And now you know. Winning.
Yeah, I just echo that as well. I've got comments both ways. We've converted some civil engineers to environmental engineering, and we've shoveled some environmental engineers to non-engineering.
Non-engineer.
So it kind of does go both ways.
Are they in my department?
Maybe they are now, I don't know. But yeah, the feedback they get, like, oh wow, I didn't realize that. One of the things I like to do too on community bridge projects, as well as other summer related, is have the students do a lot of the groundwork and let them get out and talk to the partners or the businesses. And if there's a problem arise, my first thing is, well, what'd you do to solve it? I'm not going to come in and fix it for you. I want you to solve it, unless they can't, and then I'll point them in the right direction. So I try to, I don't want to say sink or swim, but let them get out there and do the communication, do the actual solution, and not just plug and chug kind of projects. I want them to actually use their creativity and their social skills and include that as part of it as well.
And I guess that goes to another one of my questions I wanted to ask you three, which is how involved do you usually have your community partners? A lot of times you might have a project proposal beforehand, but then after that, what is the flow throughout the semester? Because it can be super challenging, and during times you can't get a hold of them, and what does that look like, and how do you address those challenges?
For me, I guess once projects are started, there's actually typically kind of little communication with the partners. Sometimes, again, related to CBI stuff, if we do stuff with the school, we're looking at air pollution in or around the school. Sometimes the schools are very involved, sometimes not. I've got keys to half of the schools here in the valley, just because here's some keys, come in when you need to. So,
it's amazing.
Yeah. So I don't know, for me I guess mostly it's almost sort of been a hands-off once the project gets started.
For the first few years when I was working with Special Olympics Utah, because they're in Salt Lake and I knew the people that worked there, I was very much the go-between and would plan everything, and that became a huge logistical nightmare. And so this semester, with my focus groups at least, I took a big risk and assigned a student to each partner, and they were in charge of communication with that partner. And one of the partners, it went really well, and another one, there were some hiccups, and I got a panicked phone call. We're supposed to do a focus group today, and there's only 2 people. What do we do? And we got 3 focus groups scheduled, and I was like, okay, well, what can we do? So we had to troubleshoot that immediately. But there's not a lot of communication in the middle other than, here's the day we're going to come. Please make sure you have rooms ready. With social media, though, because the students for 10 weeks are responsible for much of the public face of these clients, there has to be a lot more communication, because when there isn't, that's when you get that's when, not necessarily the students mess up, but that's when a lack of communication usually ends up disappointing someone. And so we started making our students every week, they email the client and copy the professor and say, here's everything I did, let me know if you have any questions. And that way, we put a lot of the responsibility back on the client to say, give us really detailed feedback, or we're gonna keep going down this same track, these same themes we're gonna keep doing. We're gonna assume that you like what we're doing, and we're gonna keep going. And unless you give feedback, and I will say, I'm cheating too, because I am a client for social media now that I think about it, because I'm responsible for JCOM. And I've replied back the first couple of weeks, like, I didn't like this, and you need to fix this. And then I met with the other professor, and she was like, you need to remember that it's week 4, not week 10. And I was like, fine, whatever. So, but we are much more in contact with them a lot during those 10 weeks, because you definitely don't want the provost emailing you about a post you put up on the Center for Women and Gender's Twitter account, hypothetically. That's all. You just don't want that.
No, it sound like
It was not a good thing. Everything was fine in the end.
That's important. Jennifer, do you have any thoughts just about, I guess, those external partners, or even the workload for you as a partner then, sort of that flip side of how much organization does it take for the class? And
well, the way I don't run the student farm. I'm the mentor for the student farm. So the farm managers are actually, I put the students in contact with my student farm managers. So I work with the student farm managers to come up with ideas for projects and have them, communicate with me. But I don't try and micromanage it all. I can't. It wouldn't be possible.
Jennifer, are any of your farm managers in paid positions, or are these all volunteers and et cetera?
So the student farm managers are paid, yes. And the way it sort of works is that we recruit volunteers, we have the classes participate, and then ideally out of our most enthusiastic volunteers we will select interns, and then out of our most enthusiastic and capable interns we select, and these are paid internships too. We select managers who have a longer commitment and are also paid. So that's sort of cool. The hierarchy that they go to, so that by the time they become farm manager, and I also have a list of classes that I'd like them to take, if at all possible.
Thank you.
And I will say, going again to sort of the requirements, that scope of work at the beginning that you turn in the first month of school, that's that key area to have those conversations with the community partners to better understand how engaged they are going to be throughout the semester. A lot of our projects are really just, here, take it, run with it, let me know what you do at the end. You give them the deliverables, you give them a presentation, and maybe they check in once or twice throughout the semester, but that's really it. Some of them are much more hands-on, and for those that are much more hands-on, we really need to communicate with the partners the responsibility that they have. They need to be giving the social media students articles on a regular basis, or here's a news post, write about this, that type of ongoing communication. And if they can't shoulder that, then we need to know from the beginning, because maybe that's not the type of partnership that they're really going to fit right now. So in a lot of ways, that's what I do. That's what my department does, is sort of do that filtering. But those beginning scope of works are key in just making sure everyone's on the same page. And then we also very much so encourage a mid-semester check-in, and that's more for the faculty, because by that point a lot of times the students are the main contacts. But this is a time for faculty and community partner just to jump on the phone again and say, okay, here's where we're at right now. This is where we thought we were going to be at. Here are the challenges. Here's what we think the new deliverables are going to be. Sound good? Sound good. Done. So we encourage that. It's sort of up to you as to how that actually works. So I want to turn it over to questions from anyone out there, but before I do so, last question for me is, what is the top piece of advice that you would recommend to faculty who have never taught a community engaged class or worked with the Community Bridge Initiative? What have you learned? What would you recommend them considering before they dive in head first? Go for it, Rick.
Okay. As I already mentioned, jump on it early in the semester. There's always delays, and as it pushes towards the end of the semester, everybody gets a little frustrated. So as early as you can define, what the deliverables are, what the project itself is in detail, the better off you are. So just early as you can, detailed plans.
Mine goes kind of along with that, and that is be flexible and have a plan B. Because things happen for your community partner, at Special Olympics Utah, like the person who I was working with all of a sudden doesn't work there anymore because turnover in nonprofits is so high. At the schools, we were planning on doing focus groups these days, and all of a sudden it's, testing week. And you can't do it then. Oops. So be flexible. And I always start off the semester, the conversation with the students is, we are very lucky to be doing this, and you need to be flexible, right? So warn them. And so I build in a lot of kind of TBD days in the last 3 or 4 weeks of the semester, because I've never had the syllabus work out just right with this research methods class, ever. Not even one time. Like, when it does, it will be the second coming. So I will warn y'all. But just letting them know, we will push dates back, and I will do whatever it takes for you to have the optimum learning experience. But this is plan A, and we're going to just be flexible as long as we can. But also, I would say that, this is going to sound terrible. I probably shouldn't say this, but my research methods class is consistently, it's the one where I'm challenged the most in my evaluation scores. And often it's because this was really hard. The comments are like, this was harder than I thought it was going to be. And I think it's a combination of the academic research paper part just kind of hits them in the face. They can't put it off the way they do other assignments. But also, doing work outside in the community, they put a lot more pressure on themselves too, because it's going to go somewhere than, it's going to be in front of more eyes than just me. And it really does, it challenges them. But I get a lot of students who come back after a year of working out in the field and who say, oh my gosh, it's just like that. I wish I had known. And I'm like, I know, can you go change your idea score that you gave me? Because that would be awesome. But they don't, so.
We regularly wish that it could be 6 months later, because that is about the point where all of the students are saying, oh my gosh, that was amazing.
Yeah.
And that is one of the things that we always look at, is the retention of CEL students. So if you take one course, how likely are you going to be to take another course? And give them one semester and it skyrockets, and they think, wow, I really wish that I had that experience again, and I learned so much more about that class.
Oh, can I say one more thing? So I teach a connection, I didn't even wait for you to say yes. I teach a connections class, and we volunteered at the Willow Park, the zoo talk. I live in Ogden, I don't know the name of the zoo. I didn't even know there was a zoo until somebody told me. But I thought for sure these students were gonna absolutely hate. We went, and they were literally scraping poop off of bridges and cleaning muck, raking muck out of the pond. It was disgusting. And I was like, I wouldn't do that if I were you. I was standing off to the side like, I don't feel good. I can't do this. But they got so into it, and these are all these new freshmen, and the reflection part, I haven't gotten my evaluations yet, but the reflection part was very much, I thought I would hate this, but I wanted to go out and do more. They were like, I want to go back to the zoo, or I want to try this more. This was a chance to at least we weren't in a classroom. Like, that was a big one too. At least we weren't in the classroom. So they did, I mean, things that I think they're going to hate, they love. And things that I'm like, this is going to be so cool. They're like, I don't think so. So sometimes they'll surprise you.
So I think I already alluded to my biggest challenge, which is how to provide opportunities for large groups of students. I think that can be really tricky. And together with that, so obviously there's a limit to how many of these projects my student farm managers can manage, or any of the community partners. And so what do the students who can't make it do, right? And so scheduling is can be another really big challenge. And they complain, it's my fault if there aren't times that they are available. My solution around that is to have projects up my sleeve to give these students, we learned about organic certification rules. So could you write, a really short 500-word essay for our newsletter or our website, even, on that topic? So that's how I try to get around that. And with good students it works, others still complain sometimes. But I think for the most part, they also really love it. And even if we have, the project is weeding the lettuce in the hoop houses, they'll say, well, I wasn't expecting to like this, but it was actually so much fun. It was a break from being in classes, and I got to meet new people, and so they usually surprise themselves.
I want to know what a hoop house is.
A hoop house
it's
a greenhouse.
Oh, okay.
Unheated greenhouse made of hoops.
Oh, sorry, I'm not a farmer. I'm a city mouse. I apologize.
Any questions from any of you that we can answer for you? Or anything, yeah, go ahead.
I have another for Jennifer regarding, so the organic farm, you're selling a food product.
Yes.
Obviously it's working, but any challenges working with local or state regulatory oversight as far as inspections, requirements for food safety handling? You're not selling prepared foods, but still you're selling a food product. So anything along those lines that have been challenged?
We are certified organic, and the students maintain that certification, and other than a few warnings, we haven't lost that. And so that doesn't mean we're GOP certified, good agricultural, the GAP, good agricultural practices as a part of the Farm Bill that came into effect a few years ago. It's not required for small farms, but large farms have to go through very stringent food safety, even out in the field. But we actually talk about that in class. We go through that, we compare it to the organic standards. And the organic standards already incorporate, so that manure, segregating manure from fresh produce, all of that is built into the organic standards. So we have signs that they have to wash their hands prior to harvesting. We have dedicated harvest buckets. I think we do the same as any small farm. And yes, it's always scary when you think about the potential for what could go wrong, and so far nothing has.
Thank you.
We also have a lot of dietetic and nutrition classes that are CEL designated, and in most of those cases they get around actually having to have any certification themselves by making sure that they're partnering with someone who has all of that. And then the partner is required, and again, this is in your MOU, so just like the background check, they have to ensure that the students are doing everything correctly, so it's not a liability for the faculty. Sort of a workaround, but it works. And you had a question?
So my question was, is this required of all of your students? Do they opt in, or do they have the opportunity to opt out?
It's required of all of my students. If you take social media or research methods, you're gonna work with a client.
It's one of the assignments.
It's the whole semester, yeah. So in social media, the first 4 weeks are theory and a business plan, and then 10 weeks of intensive working with a client, producing material every week for them. And the only option is, like, I give you a list and it's first come, first serve. Who do you want to work with? And sometimes, like, we have fights. They have, like, knockdown, drag out, who gets to be the second person on this team between 5 people. And then they have to work with whoever, but it's required.
In mine, it's not. It's sort of an opt-in. It depends on the projects that we have going on. Some of them are more in line with community bridge interests, and some of them aren't. And so I was going to say they don't really get the chance to volunteer, because I found out it's best to assign projects kind of randomly to student groups.
Yeah.
We actually had a double random assignment this year, so. So yeah, it just varies on what projects we have and what community interest we have.
And that is one of the ways Jennifer mentioned, having a larger class and just dealing with that many students trying to find things. That is one of the ways that some of our larger classes, our lower level classes, do deal with this, is they'll make it optional, and in some cases they get extra credit if they do a set amount of hours and then write the reflection essay. In some cases it can take the place of an assignment, something along those lines. So it still does need to hold weight of some sort, but it's up to, for the designation, you can decide if it's an opt-in or if everyone's going to be involved. So there is a lot of flexibility. Same thing, you can decide if it's a course that, like social media, all of the faculty teach it this way, versus this faculty is going to teach this section this way and this one is going to teach it a different way entirely. So there is some flexibility as to how designations work and sort of how you can build it into your class. Any other questions? So one of the things that I wanted to mention earlier that I forgot to touch on, actually these are 2 of the things I will say, benefit-wise for faculty, to start with. I think at all points of time you mentioned being out in the community, and this is a big piece for the students, depending on your class and depending on how packed it is. Some people just say, okay, you have to do this time on your own, you schedule it. We also have a lot of faculty who will actually schedule their community activity during the class period. So this is another way just to sort of work around that syllabus and have those TBD days, is saying, okay, every other Friday, it's a community bridge day, and you go out and you do your activity, you're scheduling it. It might be all of you working together, it might be just a few people working on this, but it gives you flexibility, and in a lot of cases that means you also don't have to be there. So it depends again on the project. Sometimes you need that oversight, sometimes it's a nice way to say, let me know if you need me, otherwise every other Friday, go do your work. So that's one of the benefits. That's sort of an offline benefit. The other one that is more formal is we do offer mini grants for CEL courses, CEL designated courses. These are fairly small grants. Usually they're in between $500 and $1,500, and we do have a limited amount to give on an annual basis. You do have to be CEL designated, and this money does have to go towards your course or the project in some way. So we've had LAP courses who are doing maybe an urban plan of some sort, and they have 3 different groups who each create their own plan, and then that's presented to the city. We have paid for the poster boards and some of the research funds and things along those lines. We've also, my personal favorite is we can pay for a TA for your class. So that's a great way where it goes into that sort of running the project, because again, you might not be there every other Friday when you're telling your students to go out and be there, but you can have your TA there, or you can have someone else there. So we will cover the cost of that as well. It has to, there's a very short grant application. They do have each semester we can only fund so many of them, but it's a great way to take a project that maybe you think there is a little bit more cost when it comes to what you need to put into it the first few years. We can help cover you.
With the I forgot how you described it, but my research methods class, I'm trying something new next semester. Like I said, this one has evaluations that are kind of all over the map. And so every semester I go through this intensive, my own reflective period where I go off on my own and meditate on what it was that went right and what went wrong. And so we're trying, next semester I'm going to be teaching it. It's going to be a Monday, Wednesday, Friday class instead of just 2 days a week. But that Friday is going to be group work time, because one of the challenges that I found is that scheduling, oh my gosh, if you ask them to do something that's not during class time, they will riot. And so instead of costing valuable time that I usually need those 2 days a week, we're going to have that third day is going to be, you know what, 3 weeks out of the month, this is group work time. You will get together. This is when you might be able to schedule some of your actual site visits. But it's a chance it's going to take some of the pressure off of that scheduling for students, because I want to respect the fact that they build their schedule around when they're supposed to be in class, and me asking them to go visit a high school twice during the semester and then spend 2 hours another time during the semester conducting a focus group, that's a lot of time out of their very tightly packed schedules for quite a few of them, especially those who are working too. So we're getting a little creative with the scheduling in ways that I hadn't thought of before.
Yeah, this is more a general question for the university. Do you have institutions, organizations, businesses that approach you when they do go shopping out through the university community who would like to take this on?
Definitely. And just for project-wise, I can pull a list for you right now and give you probably close to 80 projects that we have that are sitting there waiting to connect with a class. In fact, Randy, I have another project for you. That the city would like some air quality at their new landfill.
Oh, the new.
Yeah.
Ooh, landfill air quality.
You have that and you say, oh, that's going to fit into engineering, or that's going to be in education, or that's going to be in landscaping.
We
and
do.
Then you go approach someone, or how do you?
It goes both ways. Definitely, if we have a high priority project, I will usually send out a couple of emails or see if I can't meet up with someone, sometimes visit the provost office and say, okay, who's that key person who who can fill this project? Honestly, sometimes I don't have time to do that. So there are some projects that either maybe I don't know exactly where they fit, or they aren't as high priority, that are going to sit there until someone then comes up to me and says, okay, I'm teaching a health education class. What do you have for me? And then I can pull my list and say, here are the 5 classes that might fit for you. Which ones are you most interested in? And make those connections. So definitely we have that list. I'm getting new ones on a regular basis. We also host a semester event, typically, where it's a speed networking, where we bring our community partners, we bring our faculty who are interested, and they sit down, take 4 minutes to, this is the class I'm teaching, this is the project I need, is there a connection? No? Okay, here there is a connection. We just actually hosted our fall one on Friday, and the project, the collaborations that are going to come out of that are absolutely amazing. I think that we had over 15 projects that were developed from that hour period of time alone. So we're doing what we can, but we also sort of need to know where there's interest in order to not have me just knocking on everyone's door. Are you interested?
So just because your class has been CEO certified before, doesn't mean it has to be all the time.
No.
So what's that process?
So if you are no longer teaching with that community engagement piece, you just let me know. If you have decided you are going to teach it, but it's going to be a complete different thing, like not just a different partner, but we're just remodeling the entire class, and maybe I'm having them do something over here on the side instead. Or going from having every student required to do it to just having it optional. There's a very simple form, once again, that you just send to me on a regular basis. All of this is on our website, which again is cel.usu.edu. So just get that to me and we can make that change. again, all of the designated classes show up in Banner, and part of this is for the students. So we are expecting there's going to be some out-of-class work going on, and we want them to understand that when they're signing up for classes as well. We have quite a few students who search specifically for these classes because they love them and know that they want to do them. We also have some who look at that and say, oh, that's going to be 15 extra
Never
hours.
mind.
I can't do that this semester. I have a packed semester. Maybe I'll take this class another time. So it goes both ways, but we do want to be fairly transparent with our students so they know what they're getting themselves into.
Mine is a required course for my students. They're not getting out of it.
And they will, in 5 years from now, reflect back and say, that was
Right.
the course that changed my life.
I need a long-term evaluation.
Exactly.
Very.
Exactly. Well, if there's no other questions, thank you everyone for being here today. If anyone has any questions or wants to brainstorm about projects right now, I'm going to be here for a little bit longer. I actually think that on this next slide, final slide, is my contact information. So feel free to jot that down. You can email me at any point of time. Our office, it's the Center for Civic Engagement and Service Learning. We're in TSC 318. So always feel free to come and visit us. We're sort of tucked away in the corner. You also are welcome to stop by the Service Center, which is the area where students can find volunteer opportunities that are co-curricular. That again is on the 3rd floor of TSC, another one of our programs. But thank you so much for being here today.
Yay.
And thank you